The alien tribunal demanded her execution, but the human had a different plan. Peyton Turner stood before the Galactic Tribunal's towering black spires, his dark armored suit reflecting the harsh sunlight of the desert. The short blade strapped to his back felt heavier than usual as he reviewed his latest assignment on the holographic display projected from his wrist unit. Execute target designation AX-279. Extreme caution advised. Subject classified as maximum threat level. The text scrolled across his vision in stark red letters. Location: Sector 7, New Damascus Colony. He ran a hand over his clean-shaven head, frowning. Something about this mission felt off. In his decades serving as the Tribunal's enforcer, he'd never encountered a threat assessment this high for a single target. Interesting briefing, Turner. The gruff voice belonged to Commander Richards, his direct superior. The older man's weathered face bore the scars of countless campaigns. Sir, just reviewing the parameters. Peyton kept his tone neutral. Seems unusual. No specifics on the target's capabilities, no image data, just a threat level and location. Richard's expression darkened. That's all you need to know. Deal. Get in, eliminate the target, and get out. Clean and simple. With respect, sir, nothing's ever simple when the Tribunal's involved. Watch that attitude, Turner. Just do your job. Richards turned to leave, but paused. And Peyton, don't get creative on this one. The Tribunal wants confirmation of termination within 24 hours. Quote, dot. Peyton watched his commander stride away, boots crunching on the crystalline sand. The desert wind whipped his armored coat around his legs as he contemplated the mission. The lack of detail was suspicious. The Tribunal usually provided an extensive dossier on execution targets, including combat capabilities, known associates, and psychological profiles. This time, nothing. Time to find out what they're not telling me, he muttered, activating his transport beacon. The air shimmered around him as the teleportation field engaged. New Damascus materialized around him in a flash of quantum displacement. The colony was a sprawling maze of sand-colored buildings and winding streets, its architecture a blend of Earth's ancient Middle East and modern alien aesthetics. Hovercraft zipped between towers that seemed to grow organically from the desert floor. Peyton checked his wrist display again. The target's location pinged in a residential sector on the outskirts of the colony. As he made his way through the crowded streets, he noticed an unusual number of Tribunal peacekeepers patrolling the area. Their pristine white armor stood out against the earthy tones of the buildings. They've got this place locked down tight, he thought, ducking into a side alley to avoid another patrol. What are they hunting? The target's location led him to a modest dwelling unit. Unremarkable, except for the complete absence of neighbors. The surrounding buildings stood empty, their windows dark and lifeless. Peyton's combat instinct screamed danger. He drew his blade, the monomolecular edge humming softly in the desert air. The door's security system yielded easily to his override codes as it slid open. He moved inside with practiced silence, sensors scanning for threats. The interior was sparsely furnished, dimly lit by filtered sunlight. Nothing seemed out of place until he reached the main living area. There, bathed in a shaft of light from a ceiling window, stood his target. Peyton froze, his blade half raised. The being before him was nothing like the dangerous criminal he had expected. She was humanoid, tall and graceful, with pale pink skin that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. Long flowing hair, the color of dawn, cascaded down her back, partially obscuring pointed ears that marked her as non-human. Her outfit, a revealing black ensemble that left little to the imagination, seemed completely at odds with someone supposedly dangerous enough to warrant maximum security protocols. She turned to face him, and Peyton felt his breath catch. Her eyes were like liquid silver, seeming to peer straight into his soul. There was no fear in them, only a quiet resignation. "So, you said," her voice was musical and strangely accented, "they sent their best executioner. I suppose I should be flattered." Peyton kept his blade ready but didn't advance. "You know who I am?" "Everyone knows the Tribunal Shadow Blade." She smiled sadly. "The question is, do you know who I am? Did they tell you why I must die?" Quote, "They didn't tell me anything," Peyton admitted, studying her carefully. "Just that you're considered extremely dangerous." "Ha." She laughed, a sound like crystal wind chimes. "Dangerous? Yes. I suppose I am, to their carefully constructed order, to their lies." She took a step toward him, and Peyton tensed. "But not to you, Peyton Turner. Not unless you force me to be." "Pauline, how do you know my name?" "Pauline, I know many things. It's why they fear me, why they want me dead." She gestured around the empty room. "They've cleared this entire sector, evacuated hundreds of people, all because they're terrified of what one lone woman might do." Peyton lowered his blade slightly. "What exactly can you do?" Quote, "Would you believe me if I told you?" She moved closer, and this time he didn't raise his weapon. Or would you rather I show you?" Before he could respond, the air around them seemed to ripple. Images flooded his mind. Vast starfields, ancient civilizations, secrets buried in the depths of space. He saw the Tribunal's true face, the corruption behind their supposed justice, the genocides they orchestrated in the name of order. When the vision cleared, he found himself on one knee, gasping. The woman stood before him, concern evident on her ethereal features. "Now you understand," she said softly. "I am the last of my kind, the final survivor of a race the Tribunal systematically destroyed because they feared our abilities, our gift to see truth, to share knowledge across minds." Peyton stood slowly, his head still spinning from the psychic contact. "They're not executing a criminal," he realized. "They're trying to eliminate a witness." She nodded. "The last witness to their greatest crimes. The question is, Peyton Turner, what will you do with this knowledge?" He looked at his blade, then at the woman who had just shattered everything he thought he knew about his employers. The Tribunal wanted her dead within 24 hours. They'd know if he failed to carry out his mission. "What's your name?" he asked finally. "Nadria," she replied, "though my people had another name for me, one that was lost with them." Peyton made his decision. He sheathed his blade. "We need to get you somewhere safe," he said. "Somewhere they won't think to look." The desert winds howled across the dunes as Peyton guided his stealth skimmer toward the horizon. Nadria sat behind him, her arms wrapped around his waist for stability. The twin moons of New Damascus cast ethereal shadows across the crystalline sand. "How much further?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Almost there," Peyton replied. "My sanctuary is hidden in the Crimson Cliffs. The Tribunal sensors can't penetrate the mineral deposits there." Quote, they had barely escaped New Damascus. The Tribunal's forces had mobilized with surprising speed, forcing them to fight their way through 3 security checkpoints. Peyton had witnessed Naria's abilities firsthand during their escape. Her psychic powers had turned their pursuers' own weapons against them, though she'd been careful not to take lives. The skimmer crested another dune, revealing a massive wall of red rock stretching into the night sky. Peyton guided them into a narrow canyon, the vehicle's anti-grav systems humming as they navigated the tight space. "Home sweet home," he said, bringing them to a stop before what appeared to be a solid rock face. A few quick commands on his wrist unit caused a section of the cliff to shimmer and fade, revealing a hidden entrance. The hangar inside was small but well equipped. Peyton helped Natria dismount, noting how she swayed slightly from exhaustion. Using her abilities during their escape had clearly taken a toll. "You need rest," he said, supporting her with an arm around her waist. "The living quarters are this way." The sanctuary was a series of interconnected caves, naturally formed but enhanced with modern amenities. The main living area featured comfortable furnishings, atmospheric processing, and a small kitchen unit. "It's beautiful," Nadria said, taking in the crystalline formations that decorated the walls. "How long have you had this place?" 5 years. Everyone needs a backup plan in my line of work." He helped her to a couch. "I never thought I'd be using it to hide from my employers." She caught his hand as he turned away. "Thank you, Peyton, for believing me, for helping me." Their eyes met, and Peyton felt that same electric connection from their first meeting. Her silver eyes seemed to glow in the dim light of the cave. "I should check the perimeter defenses," he said quickly, pulling away. "Get some rest. The bathroom's through there if you want to clean up." He spent the next hour reviewing security systems and erasing their trail. When he returned to the main room, he found Naria wrapped in one of his spare robes, her pink skin still flushed from the shower. "Feel better?" he asked, trying to keep his voice casual. She nodded, patting the couch beside her. "Join me. We should talk about what happens next. The Tribunal won't stop looking. They'll tear the planet apart to find you." "I know." She shifted closer, her movement causing the robe to slip slightly off one shoulder. "But for tonight, we're safe thanks to you." The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken tension. Peyton found himself studying the graceful curve of her neck, the way her damp hair clung to her skin. "Naria," he began, but she pressed a finger to his lips. "I can sense your thoughts, Peyton," she whispered. "Your desires, your fears. You don't have to hide them from me." "This is complicated," he managed. "You're my responsibility. I'm supposed to protect you." She laughed softly. "And who says you can't do both? My people don't share human hesitations about such things. When we feel a connection, we honor it." Before he could respond, she leaned forward and kissed him. The contact sent a surge of sensation through his mind. Not just physical pleasure, but emotions, memories, desires, all intertwined. He felt her loneliness, her grief for her lost people, and beneath it all, a growing affection for him. When they finally parted, both were breathing heavily. "Stay with me tonight," she said simply. "Let me show you how my people express gratitude and something more." Peyton knew he should refuse, should maintain professional distance. But as she took his hand and led him toward the bedroom, he found he didn't want to. The next morning, Peyton woke to find Nicaria still sleeping peacefully beside him. The events of the night felt almost dreamlike. The sharing of not just bodies but minds, experiencing pleasure on levels he hadn't known were possible. She'd shown him wonders hidden in the depths of space, shared memories of her homeworld before its destruction, and let him feel the depth of her people's connection to the universe itself. He slipped quietly from the bed, pulling on pants before heading to check the security systems. The monitors showed no sign of pursuit yet, but he knew it was only a matter of time. "You're worried?" Nadria's voice came from behind him. She'd wrapped herself in a sheet, her hair tousled from sleep. "The Tribunal has resources we can't imagine," he said, "and now they'll be even more determined to find you." She moved to embrace him from behind, resting her cheek against his bare back. "Because of us? Because we shared something beautiful?" "Because now I have even more reason to protect you." He turned to face her. "What we shared, I've never experienced anything like it." "Nor I," she admitted. "My people could join minds with anyone, but what we shared was different, special." A warning light flashed on one of the monitors, interrupting the moment. "Tribunal patrol," he said grimly. "They're sweeping the canyons." "Where will we go?" "Wet." He pulled up a star chart. "There's a free colony in the outer rim. No Tribunal influence. If we can get off planet, we'll need help," Naria said. "There's a resistance network, people who know the truth about the Tribunal. I saw them in the minds of my captors." Peyton nodded slowly. "I might know someone who can contact them, but it's risky." "Everything worth doing is," she smiled, touching his face. "We'll face it together." The desert dawn painted the sanctuary's crystalline walls in shades of amber and rose. Peyton stood at the security console, monitoring the Tribunal patrol patterns while Naria meditated nearby, her silver eyes closed in concentration. "They're getting closer," she said suddenly, opening her eyes. "I can feel their minds. They're using psychic dampeners now. They must suspect I survived." Peyton nodded grimly. "We need to move soon. My contact in the Resistance is 3 sectors away in Port Nexus. Getting there won't be easy." "What? You go." "You're worried about more than just the patrols," Nadria observed, rising gracefully to join him. Her presence beside him sent familiar tingles through his mind. Their mental connection had only grown stronger over the past few days. "I've done things, Naria. Bad things." He turned to face her. "The Resistance, they know me as the Tribunal's executioner. They won't trust me." She touched his face gently. "Let them see what I see. A man who chose truth over duty, who risked everything to protect someone he was ordered to kill." Their lips met in a tender kiss, and he felt her consciousness brush against his, sharing warmth, acceptance, understanding. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "We should get ready," he said softly. "The next patrol gap is in 2 hours." They packed quickly and efficiently. Weapons, supplies, the few personal items they couldn't leave behind. Peyton found himself watching Nataria as she moved around the sanctuary. Her movements graceful, despite the tactical gear she now wore. The past few days had changed everything. What had started as a mission had become something far more profound. As they prepared the skimmer, Nataria suddenly stiffened. "Peyton!" The warning came just as the first explosion rocked the canyon. The Tribunal had found them. "Go!" Peyton shouted, drawing his blade as armored figures rappelled down the cliff face. "Get to the skimmer." But Nataria stood her ground beside him, her eyes glowing with psychic energy. The first wave of attackers suddenly found their weapons turning in their hands, firing on their own squadmates. Others clutched their heads and fell, overwhelmed by psychic feedback. Peyton moved like liquid death through the chaos, his blade finding gaps in armor, disabling rather than killing when possible. He and Nataria had discussed this. Every death would just fuel the Tribunal's propaganda about her being dangerous. They fought their way to the skimmer, working in perfect synchronization. Nataria's powers complemented his combat skills, creating openings he could exploit, while he protected her from flanking attacks. Their mental link let them coordinate without words, moving as one. "Peyton Turner!" A familiar voice boomed across the battlefield. "Stand down! That's an order!" Commander Richards stood at the canyon's edge, flanked by elite guards. His scarred face twisted with disgust as he saw Peyton fighting alongside Nataria. "You're better than this, Turner. She's corrupted you with her alien influence." "No, sir," Peyton called back, deflecting a stun blast. "She showed me the truth about everything." "The truth?" Richards laughed harshly. "The truth is that her kind are too dangerous to exist. They can rewrite minds, plant suggestions, control people's thoughts. Look what she's done to you." Nataria's voice rang out, clear and strong. "I've done nothing but show him what you tried to hide. The genocides, the lies, the corruption." "Peyton," he warned, sensing more troops moving into position. She nodded, understanding. Together they backed toward the skimmer, maintaining a defensive perimeter. "Last chance, Turner," Richards called. "Eerie. Step away from the alien, and maybe the Tribunal will show mercy." Peyton felt Nataria's hand slip into his, their fingers intertwining. Through their connection, he felt her love, her trust, her absolute faith in him. No manipulation, no control, just pure, honest emotion. "Here's my answer, sir," he replied, raising his blade in a salute, then moving as one. He and Nataria spun into action. She unleashed a massive psychic pulse that sent the front line of troops stumbling back. Peyton used the confusion to throw a handful of sonic grenades. Their detonation created a wall of sound and fury. In seconds, they were on the skimmer and accelerating down the canyon. "They'll follow," Nataria said, clinging to him as they weaved between rock formations. "Let them!" Peyton pushed the skimmer faster. "I know these canyons better than anyone, and I've got a few surprises planned." They spent the next hour playing cat and mouse through the maze-like canyons, using Nataria's abilities to detect pursuit, while Peyton led them through increasingly treacherous passages. Finally, they emerged onto the open desert, the pursuing vehicles far behind. "That was incredible!" Nataria breathed, her arms tightening around his waist. "The way you fought! I've never seen anything like it." "We fought," he corrected, "together. I've never experienced anything like that either. The way we moved, like we could read each other's thoughts." "We could," she laughed. "Remember?" He smiled, enjoying the warmth of her pressed against his back. Hard to forget, especially after these past few days. "What?" They rode in comfortable silence for a while, both processing the morning's events. Finally, Nataria spoke again, her voice thoughtful. "Richards was wrong, you know, about my people controlling minds. We can share thoughts, feelings, and memories, but we can't force anyone to do anything against their will. What we have, what we've shared, it's real." Peyton slowed the skimmer, turning to look at her. "I know. I feel it every time we touch, every time we—" She silenced him with a kiss, their minds merging in that now familiar dance of shared sensation and emotion. When they parted, both were breathing heavily. "We should find shelter," she suggested, her eyes twinkling. "Rest before continuing to Port Nexus." "There's a trading post a few miles ahead," Peyton said, trying to focus on driving. "We can resupply. Maybe get information about tribunal movements. And perhaps find a private room? Nedria's mental touch was playful, teasing. That too, he agreed, increasing their speed slightly as they rode toward the horizon. Peyton reflected on how much his life had changed in just a few days. He'd gone from the tribunal's perfect weapon to a fugitive, from an executioner to a protector. And somehow, against all odds, he'd found something he never knew he was missing. The trading post materialized out of the desert haze like a mirage, a collection of weathered buildings clustered around a central marketplace. Solar panels glinted atop makeshift structures, and various species mingled in the dusty streets. Peyton guided their skimmer into a shadowy alley behind what appeared to be a lodging house. "Keep your hood up," he murmured to Naria. This place sees all types, but pink skin isn't common in this sector." She nodded, adjusting her cloak while sending him a mental caress that made him shiver. Their connection had grown so natural that sometimes he forgot where his thoughts ended and hers began. The innkeeper, a burly four-armed humanoid, barely glanced at them as Peyton paid for a room with untraceable credits. They were just another couple seeking privacy in a place that specialized in discretion. Their room was small but clean, with a single window overlooking the marketplace below. Naria immediately moved to the window, her curiosity about new places never dimming despite their circumstances. "So many different species," she marveled. "Yet they all coexist here, away from tribunal control." Peyton joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. That's why these posts exist. No questions asked, no authorities to answer to. Perfect for fugitives like us." "Us?" She turned in his embrace, silver eyes sparkling with mischief. "Or perhaps for other activities." Her mental touch was playful, sending waves of warmth through their connection. Peyton leaned down to kiss her, losing himself in the dual sensation of physical and psychic intimacy. A sharp knock at the door shattered the moment. They sprang apart, Peyton's hand going to his blade while Naduria's eyes began to glow with gathering power. The knock came again, followed by a deep, commanding voice. "Room service." Peyton met Nanduria's eyes. The inn hadn't mentioned any service. "I sense calculation, purpose," Nanduria whispered. "They're blocking part of their thoughts." "How many?" "2 outside the door, more in the street below." Peyton cursed softly. "Bounty hunters." The tribunal must have put out a contract. Another knock, harder this time. "Come on, lovebirds, we know you're in there. Let's handle this professionally." "Professionally?" Peyton called back, positioning himself between Naria and the door. "Like professionals who use room service as a cover?" A low chuckle from outside. "Fair point. Name's Cade Viddle. And perhaps you've heard of me." Peyton tensed. Everyone in the outer sectors knew that name. Cade Viddle was a legendary bounty hunter who always got his mark and usually brought them in alive. His fees were astronomical, but his success rate justified them. "The tribunal must be offering a fortune," Peyton muttered. "More than you can imagine, Turner," Cade called. "Enough to retire on a pleasure world for several lifetimes. But I'm willing to negotiate." "Negotiate?" Nadria stepped forward, ignoring Peyton's attempt to keep her back. Why would a bounty hunter negotiate? "Because I'm curious," came the reply. "The tribunal's perfect executioner throwing away everything to protect a mark? Diffusi." "Well, that's interesting." "And then there's you, mysterious lady. The bounty specifically mentions bringing you in unharmed. That's unusual for the tribunal." Peyton and Naria exchanged glances. Through their link, they shared the same thought. This was unexpected. "If I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead," Cade continued. "I've got shooters covering every exit, but I'd rather talk. Learn what's really going on here." "Peyton," Naria touched his arm. "He's different. His thoughts are guarded, but I sensed genuine curiosity and something else." "Experience with tribunal lies." He studied her face for a moment, then nodded. "All right, Vil, let's talk. But just you, unarmed. Do I look stupid, Turner? I've seen your work. You keep your blade. I keep my blaster. Fair deal?" The door opened slowly, revealing a tall, powerfully built man with cybernetic augmentations visible along his neck and arms. His skin was a deep bronze, and his black hair was cropped short, with a distinctive silver streak. A sleek blaster hung at his hip, and his stance spoke of years of combat experience. "Well," he commented, glancing around the room. His augmented eyes lingered on Narya. "The rumors didn't do you justice, lady. Now I understand why Turner went rogue." "It's not what you think," Peyton started. But Cade waved him off. "Spare me. The love at first sight story. I'm more interested in why the Tribunal wants her alive. They're not usually so particular about their targets." "Show him," Narya suggested softly. Peyton hesitated. "Are you sure? If he's going to understand, he needs to see." Cade looked between them, confusion evident on his face. "See what?" Nagria stepped forward, her eyes beginning to glow. "The truth, if you're willing." "Hold it right there!" Cade's hand moved toward his blaster, but he wasn't fast enough. Nigria's mental touch was gentle, but insistent, sharing carefully selected memories. The Tribunal's genocide of her people, their fear of psychic abilities they couldn't control, the lies they'd used to justify mass murder. Away. When it was over, Cade staggered slightly, catching himself against the wall. That's impossible. The Tribunal is corrupt, sure, but genocide? "Why do you think they want her unharmed?" Peyton asked quietly. "They want to study her, figure out how to control or replicate her abilities, and then kill me," Narya added. "Like they killed my people." Cade was silent for a long moment, his augmented eyes shifting through scanning patterns as he processed what he'd seen. Finally, he straightened. "Well?" He ran a hand over his short hair. "This complicates things." "Will you help us?" Narya asked. "Help you, lady? I should be running in the opposite direction. The Tribunal doesn't forgive people who interfere with their plans." He paused, then smiled grimly. "But I've never been good at following rules." Relief flooded through Peyton. "Your team?" Quote, "They follow my lead, and they're all people who've lost something to the Tribunal." He activated his comm unit. "Stand down, everyone. Plans have changed. Bah." "What now?" Nagria asked. "Now." Cade's smile turned predatory. "We figure out how to get you off-world without the Tribunal noticing, and maybe, just maybe, find a way to make them pay for what they've done." The trading post's crowded marketplace had transformed into a battlefield waiting to happen. Peyton could feel the tension in the air as he, Nabria, and Cade huddled over a holographic map in their room. "The smuggler tunnel starts here," Cade indicated a point beyond the settlement's boundaries. "It's an old mining shaft that leads to a hidden spaceport. The catch? We've got to cross the glass desert." "That's suicide," Peyton protested. "The crystalline storms will tear any vehicle apart." Nabria leaned closer, her presence sending familiar warmth through their mental link, "unless we have a way to predict them." Cade's augmented eyes narrowed as he focused on her. "You can sense the storms?" "My people could read more than minds," she explained. "We were connected to the natural world in ways the Tribunal never understood. That's partly why they feared us." A sudden burst of static from Cade's comm interrupted them. "Boss, we've got company. 2 teams. Tribunal elite squad from the north, rival hunters from the east." "Perfect," Cade muttered. "They must have tracked my team here." He turned to Peyton and Narya. "We need to move. Now!" Peyton was already gathering their essential gear. Through their connection, he felt Narya's mix of determination and concern. "The Tribunal team. Commander Richards," she confirmed, her eyes distant as she scanned with her abilities. "He's leading them personally this time. And something else. Something wrong. Anton. How? They have some kind of psychic technology. It's painful to touch their minds." Cade checked his weapons. "So they've been preparing for this. Probably developed countermeasures after your escape." He activated his comm again. "Team, initiate protocol scatter. Rendezvous at Point Echo." The first explosion rocked the building before he finished speaking. Peyton pulled Naharia close as debris rained down, shielding her with his body. Through the newly created hole in the wall, they could see combat vehicles moving into position around the trading post. "Well," Cade grinned, drawing his blaster, "at least we don't have to worry about a subtle exit anymore." They moved fast, using the confusion of the initial attack as cover. Cade's team provided excellent distraction, engaging both enemy forces from multiple positions. The marketplace had emptied quickly. The locals knew better than to get caught in a 3-way fight between bounty hunters and the Tribunal. "The tunnel entrance is 2 kilometers east," Cade shouted over the weapons fire. "I've got a heavy transport hidden nearby. A massive explosion behind them sent them diving for cover. Through the smoke, Peyton caught glimpses of Richards's elite squad, their black armor decorated with Tribunal symbols in blood red. "Naria!" Richards' voice boomed across the battlefield. "Surrender now, and we'll spare your companions." "Like you spared my people?" she called back, her eyes blazing with silver fire. Several Tribunal soldiers suddenly found their weapons overheating, forcing them to drop them. "Yourself. Your people were a threat to order, to stability." Richards was moving closer, his armor seemingly resistant to Nandaria's abilities. "Look at you, turning our best executioner against us with your alien influence." Peyton felt Nagria's hurt through their link. "He's wrong," he told her firmly. "What we have is real." She squeezed his hand. "I know, but he'll never understand." "Less talking, more running," Cade interrupted, laying down covering fire as they sprinted between buildings. They were almost to the edge of the settlement when another group of figures emerged from a side street, rival bounty hunters, their armor a mix of styles and veils. Their leader called out, "That bounty's ours!" Quote, "Funny," Cade replied. "I don't see your name on it." Quote, the firefight intensified as they were caught between both groups. Peyton moved on instinct, his blade deflecting shots, while Nagria used her powers to create chaos among their attackers. Cade proved why he was legendary, his augmented reflexes allowing him to target multiple enemies simultaneously. They fought their way to a large warehouse. Inside, a massive transport vehicle sat ready, its engines already humming. "Everyone in!" Cade ordered, laying down suppressing fire. Peyton helped Naturia into the transport, then turned to provide cover for Cade. Through their link, he felt her sudden spike of alarm. "Peyton! Behind you!" He spun just as Richards burst through a side door, moving with enhanced speed from his armor systems. The commander's fist caught Peyton in the ribs, sending him stumbling. "I trained you better than this, Turner," Richards growled, advancing. "Throwing everything away for an alien witch." Peyton recovered his stance, blade ready. "You trained me to seek truth, sir. That's exactly what I'm doing." They clashed in a blur of blade and armor, neither able to gain the advantage. Richards' enhanced suit made him incredibly strong, but Peyton had spent years learning his fighting style. Suddenly, Richards staggered, clutching his head. Nymeria stood in the transport's doorway, her power focused entirely on him. "The dampeners?" Richards gasped. "How?" "You never understood us," Nadria said sadly. "Our abilities aren't technology to be countered. They're part of who we are." "And love," Peyton didn't waste the opening, "love makes them stronger." His blade found a joint in Richards' armor, disabling but not killing. The commander collapsed, his system shorting out. "Peyton!" Cade called urgently. "We need to move! More teams incoming!" They roared out of the warehouse, just as fresh explosions rocked the settlement. Cade's driving was aggressive but skilled as they headed into the desert, pursuit vehicles close behind. "The glass desert's our only chance," he said grimly. "They won't follow us in there." "If the storms don't kill us first," Peyton pointed out, holding Naria close as the transport bounced over the terrain. She closed her eyes, concentrating. "I can feel them, the patterns in the crystal formations. There's a safe path, but it's narrow." "Good enough for me," Cade said, adjusting their course as they entered the glass desert. Massive crystalline formations rose around them like frozen waves. The air itself seemed to shimmer with dangerous energy. Now, Naria guided them through, her mind linked with both Peyton and Cade to share her sense of the safe route. Behind them, their pursuers began to fall back, unwilling to risk the deadly storms. Finally, after what seemed like hours, they emerged on the other side. The hidden spaceport was just visible in the distance. "We made it," Cade breathed, genuine amazement in his voice. "I've never seen anyone navigate the glass desert like that." Naria smiled tiredly, leaning against Peyton. Through their connection, he felt her exhaustion, but also her joy at their escape. "Get some rest," he told her softly. "We've still got a long journey ahead." She looked up at him, her silver eyes full of love and trust. "As long as we're together, I'm not afraid." Their kiss was mental, but filled with promise. Two minds merging in that now familiar dance of shared emotion and sensation. "Hey, lovebirds!" Cade called from the front. Save it for when we're safely off-world. The hidden spaceport came into view as their transport crested the final dune, a collection of weathered hangars, half buried in the sand. Peyton felt Napriya tense beside him. Through their mental link, she whispered, "Something's wrong. The minds," she said quickly, "and they're too orchestrated, too disciplined." Cade's augmented eyes worked as he scanned the facility. "Tribunal forces. They must have found this place after my last run," he cursed softly. "And they've got heavy weapons. No way we're breaking through that." Peyton was about to respond when something strange flickered through his consciousness. A tiny spark of awareness, separate from his connection with Naraya, yet somehow familiar. His eyes widened as he realized what he was feeling. "Naraya," he said softly, turning to her. "There's something." She met his gaze, her silver eyes filling with tears of joy as she placed his hand on her abdomen. "You can sense it already?" "Boy, what am I missing?" Cade asked from the driver's seat. "She's pregnant," Peyton breathed, still amazed by the faint consciousness he could feel through their link. "With my child." "Well," Cade ran a hand through his silver-streaked hair, "that complicates things. The Tribunal will want that baby even more than they want Naraya, a natural-born hybrid with both human and psychic genes." Their moment of joy was interrupted by a familiar voice booming across the desert. "Did you really think you could escape through my old smuggling roads?" Vale, Commander Richards, stood atop one of the hangars, his armor now gleaming with an odd purple-black energy. Dozens of elite troops flanked him, their weapons trained on the transport. "That's new," Peyton muttered, noting the strange modifications to his former commander's suit. "It's wrong," Nadria said, her face pale. "That energy, it's like a void in the psychic field. I can't sense anything from him or anyone near him." "Prototype psychic nullification field," Richards called out as if hearing her. "Developed from studying the remains of your people, my dear. Quite effective, isn't it?" Peyton felt Nagria's horror through their link, along with a wave of nausea that he wasn't sure came from the pregnancy or the revelation. "You're a monster!" she called back, her voice shaking with rage. "I'm a pragmatist. And now, thanks to you two, I have proof that humans and your kind can produce viable offspring." Richard's voice turned cold. "That child will be quite valuable to our research." Peyton's blade was in his hand before he consciously drew it. "Over my dead body." "That can be arranged." Richards raised his hand, and his troops began to advance. "Plan B," Cade announced suddenly, throwing the transport into reverse. "Hold on!" They roared backward as weapons fire erupted around them. Peyton pulled Natria close, trying to shield her and their unborn child as Cade executed a perfect spin turn. "There's another way off-world," the bounty hunter explained as they raced away from the spaceport. "But you're not going to like it." Quote, dot. "Less likable than facing an army with psychic nullifiers?" Peyton asked. "Ever heard of the quantum tunnels?" Nadria gasped. "The ancient transportation network." "But they're unstable." "Only if you don't know how to use them." Cade grinned. "Lucky for you, I've got a contact who's an expert." They drove deep into the desert, pursuit vehicles close behind. The nullification field seemed to have a limited range as Najaria's powers gradually returned. She used them to deflect incoming fire and confuse their pursuers. "The baby's making you stronger," Peyton realized, feeling the enhanced power through their link. "My people's abilities often increase during pregnancy," she explained, her hand resting protectively over her abdomen. A natural defense mechanism. A massive explosion rocked their transport as Richards' forces launched heavier ordnances. Cade struggled to maintain control as they skidded across the sand. "We're not going to make it to the tunnels like this," he growled. "Need a distraction." Peyton met Nadria's eyes, sharing a thought through their connection. She nodded, understanding. "Together?" "Together!" They joined hands, and Peyton felt their consciousness merge more deeply than ever before. The tiny spark of their child seemed to amplify the connection, creating a feedback loop of power that made his skin tingle. Naria's eyes blazed with silver fire as she reached out with their combined strength. The desert itself responded, massive waves of crystalline sand rising up behind them like a tsunami. Richards's forces scattered as the wall of glittering death crashed down. Even their commander's enhanced armor couldn't protect him from tons of razor-sharp crystal shards. "Holy!" Cade breathed, watching in the rearview as their pursuers disappeared under the crystalline storm. "Remind me never to piss you two off." Nadria sagged against Peyton, exhausted but triumphant. Through their link, he could feel both her fatigue and her fierce joy at protecting their child. "Rest," he told her softly, kissing her forehead. "You're not just taking care of yourself now." She smiled tiredly. "I never thought I'd have this. My people? We thought we were the last, that we'd die out completely. But now we're going to make sure our child grows up in a world where they don't have to hide what they are," Peyton promised. "Hate to interrupt the moment," Cade called back, "but we've got incoming." Richard survived. Sure enough, a single vehicle was emerging from the crystalline storm, its purple-black energy field having protected it somehow. The commander's voice crackled over their comm system. "Impressive display, Narya. The child you carry is even more valuable than we thought. Don't worry. We'll take excellent care of you both in our research facility." "You're not giving up," Peyton growled. "No," Cade agreed. "But neither are we. The tunnel entrance is just ahead." Code. Time to show the Tribunal what happens when they push people too far. As they raced toward their last hope of escape, Peyton held Nadria close, feeling the precious new life they'd created together. Whatever came next, he knew they'd face it as a family. The entrance to the quantum tunnels loomed before them, an ancient archway carved with symbols that seemed to shift and change as they watched. The structure thrummed with barely contained energy, casting everything in an ethereal blue glow. "Once we're inside, stay close," Cade warned, powering down the transport. "The tunnels respond to consciousness. One wrong thought, and you could end up scattered across dimensions." Peyton helped Narya from the vehicle, feeling both her exhaustion and determination through their link. The tiny spark of their child's consciousness pulsed stronger now, as if aware of the approaching confrontation. "Richards is coming," Natria said, her silver eyes fixed on the horizon where purple-black energy crackled against the desert sky. "He's different. The nullification field is changing him." Not for the better," Cade agreed, checking his weapons. "That tech wasn't meant for prolonged exposure. It's eating away at his mind." They hurried into the tunnel entrance. As Richard's vehicle approached, the interior was a maze of crystalline pathways that seemed to bend reality itself, each tunnel mouth leading to a different potential destination. "Which way?" Peyton asked, keeping Nashria close. Cade's augmented eyes scanned the passages. "The stable path should be nowhere left to run." Richard's voice boomed through the chamber, distorted and inhuman. The commander stood in the entrance, his armor now more void than matter, tendrils of anti-psychic energy writhing around him. "What have you done to yourself?" Peyton demanded, positioning himself between Richards and Narya. "Evolved!" Richards laughed manically. "Your alien witch showed us what humanity could become. Now I'll show you what we can surpass." He launched himself forward with impossible speed. Peyton met him, blade to void. The weapons clashed, sending quantum sparks cascading around them. "The tunnels are becoming unstable," Cade shouted, firing at Richards, only to have his shots absorbed by the void field. "That tech is disrupting the entire network." "Doubt it." Narya reached out with her powers, but the nullification field was too strong. Yet through their link, Peyton felt something else. Their unborn child's consciousness, resonating with the tunnel's ancient energy. "The baby," he gasped, understanding. "It can sense the tunnel's true nature." "Richards." "No," Nadria said firmly, her hand protectively over her abdomen. "Our child will be free." She reached for Peyton through their link, and he felt their consciousness merge completely. Not just with each other, but with their unborn child. The baby's awareness touched the quantum tunnels, and suddenly, the crystalline pathways blazed with light. "Impossible!" Richard staggered as the void field fluctuated. "What are you doing?" "Showing you what love can create," Peyton answered, rising to his feet. Through their three-way link, he could feel the tunnel's energy responding to their child's pure, uncorrupted psychic presence. The chamber began to shift, reality bending around them. Richards fired void bolts wildly, but they were absorbed by the crystalline walls, which now pulsed with familiar silver light. "The baby's purifying the tunnels." Now, Narya realized, returning them to their original purpose. Connection. They were meant to unite consciousness across space. Cade breathed, understanding dawning. Richards screamed in rage and fear as his void field began to crumble. No, I won't let you destroy everything we've built. He charged at Nabria, but Peyton was ready. His blade, now glowing with the same silver energy that filled the chamber, struck true. The void field shattered, and Richards collapsed, his armor dissolving into harmless light. The commander looked up at them, his eyes clearing of madness. What have I become? Quote, What the Tribunal made you, Peyton said softly, but it's not too late to change. The chamber stabilized, the tunnels humming with renewed purpose. Through their link, Peyton felt their child's satisfaction and Naria's joy. The Tribunal will keep coming, Richards warned, his voice weak but resolute. They'll never stop. Actually, Cade grinned, holding up a data crystal, I've been recording everything since the trading post, including your lovely confession about experimenting on Naduria's people. This will look great on the galactic news networks. And with the tunnels restored, Naria added, the truth can't be hidden anymore. Months later, Peyton stood on the balcony of their new home on a distant world, watching twin suns set over an azure ocean. Behind him, Napria hummed softly to their newborn son, whose silver eyes and pink skin marked his mixed heritage. The Tribunal had fallen shortly after Cade released the evidence of their atrocities to the galaxy. Other psychic species had emerged from hiding, and the quantum tunnels now served as bridges between cultures rather than escape routes. He's finally asleep, Natria said, joining him at the balcony. Through their link, he felt her contentment and love. He's going to be strong like his father and wise like his mother, Peyton added, pulling her close. I never thought failing an execution mission would lead to this. She laughed, the sound still making his heart race. My people have a saying, love is the greatest power in the universe. It breaks down barriers, transforms enemies into family, and creates miracles. He finished, kissing her as their son's peaceful dreams filtered through their family bond. Above them, the stars twinkled with promise, no longer holding threats but possibilities. Their child would grow up in a galaxy where different species worked together, where love could bridge any distance, and where the only traps worth falling into were the ones that led to your heart's destiny.